So, improv for product managers. So, the story here is that last year I decided to try and push myself out of my comfort zone. And around this time last year, I signed up for an improv course and actually really enjoyed it. And by the end of the year, I'd done, I think, about 30 classes and, believe it or not, actually done 2 shows, been part of 2 shows, and really enjoyed it. And over the course of that time, there were a few different principles that we'd learned through improv that I realised were really applicable to being a product manager. So what I want to do is share with you 5 principles from improv that I think can help you become a better product manager, create better products, lead a better team. So here we go. I'm going to skip through fairly quickly the first 3 and focus on the last 2 with a little bit more time and detail. So, in improv, hopefully everyone knows what improv is. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Hopefully some of you have even seen shows. There's some really great ones out there. There's even improv musicals. But in improv, you have no script, obviously. You are there to make things up on the spot. And if you imagine that someone else is saying something and you need to respond, you need to be listening. So the first principle of improv is listening, and listening actively. And Valeria talks about empathy. If you are so as a product manager, going into a meeting with a customer or with your team or with your stakeholders, with your manager, if you're not listening actively, then you're not going to be able to respond as well as you could do. So don't do it. Try and get rid of that voice in your head that thinks, I need to say what I need to say. Try and listen first. The second principle is, I've got your back. And the thing I really like about improv is that it's a team sport. You are there with other people on the stage, and if you suddenly draw a blank and don't know what to say, then someone else, hopefully you've built a level of trust where someone else will step in and fill in for you. And your role as a product manager is very similar. You are there to build trust and build a team and to support that team and get them to make the right decisions. And so you need to empower them. Hopefully you feel empowered and you can pass that empowerment onto your team. So remember, I've got your back. Number 3 is set the scene. So in improv, you don't have any props, you don't have any scenery. So if you don't tell people who you are, where you are, what you're doing, your audience is going to be very confused. And so the first thing that you learn in improv is to set the scene and, tell people who you are, where you are, or make these things up and what you're doing. The same principle applies in product management. The most important thing you can do as a product manager is to provide context. What is the problem that you're solving? Where are you going? What direction are you heading in? These are really, really important principles. So remember to set the scene and provide the context for your team. Right. Number 4, yes and. This is going to be the reason I wanted to focus a bit more on this. So I think hopefully everyone who understands and knows a little bit about product management, a little bit about improv, the first thing people always mention is, oh yes and. And this is a really important principle. Hopefully you'll get the idea that you're basically building on other people's ideas. If you go into a scene, if I went into a shop and started a scene and said, oh, can I have 2 fish and chips and some mushy peas, please? And then you responded and said, I'm sorry, sir, this is a bank. We don't serve fish and chips. That is blocking. And you don't want to be a blocker in improv. You want to be building with other people. So my message to you is don't be a blocker. However, yes and, your job is not always to say yes as a product manager, and I want to be clear and explain this a little bit. There are times when you need to say no, and there are times when you need to say yes and. And so the times when you need to say no, your job is basically twofold. One is to find the really valuable problems that need solving and to pick the most valuable ones. And then your second job is to find the best solutions to those valuable problems. So saying no, you can't solve all of the problems at once. So you have to say no to the ones that are not as valuable as you think. So you have to pick a problem. Hopefully you're empowered to pick the right problems. So saying no is important for finding the right problem. But when it gets to building the right solution, this is where it's really important, I think, to say yes and to your team, particularly with your team, but not just your team, but also to say yes and with stakeholders, with customers, to basically try and build momentum, embrace other people's ideas, take the wisdom of everyone else's perspective, because you are not the only person who has ideas. You do not have necessarily the best ideas, but you need to help build those great solutions with other people. So yes, and I think understanding that principle, knowing when to apply it, is a really important principle. And then lastly, this is the one that I think is the least intuitive, and it took me a long while in my career to understand this. And then I found this, that in improv, there's a really cool principle which illustrates this really well, which is in improv, you don't have to be funny or clever. And that is something that is kind of explained to you quite early on. And you think, well, hang on, but I'm here to help make people, laugh and have a good time. But I'm sure you've all experienced that feeling of something that you really want to achieve, a goal that you've got in life, and the more passionate you are about it, the harder you try, the closer you get to it, the more elusive it becomes. It's, you might have seen in sports, maybe in a tennis match, the closer someone gets to match points, the harder it becomes to get across the line. The other person comes back into the match. And it's this principle that sometimes trying too hard actually kind of prevents you from doing what you want to achieve. I'm sure we've all seen people who are trying too hard to be funny and they're not funny. Oh, sorry, I've gone. So in improv, the rule is, the corollary to you don't have to be funny or clever, is to do the obvious thing. Just start by, if it's a scene in a doctor's surgery, start by saying, hey doctor, I've got a pain in my knee, can you take a look? Like, that's the obvious thing. Get momentum, build momentum, and you will start to see things happen. What you have to do in these situations is to kind of let go of the goal. So you still need to focus on, or still need to try and achieve the goal, but to let go of that kind of, I suppose, obsession with trying to achieve it, and just focus on the process. And sports people often talk about focus on the process, not the outcome. And that's because they have this, they have a routine, a drilled way of doing things, and they know that that's what will help them achieve something. So my message to you is, you don't have to be funny or clever. What you need to do is just do the obvious thing, trust the process, and you'll be more likely to succeed. Those are the 5 principles. There's a couple of interesting books which I thought I might mention. The first one is specifically about improv. I actually got this for Christmas and I've started reading it. I've not got very far through it, but Improv Your Life by Pippa Evans. Pippa Evans is a very experienced, very professional improviser. If you look up Ostentatious, she's in that show. So that's the first book. And then the second one applies to this last principle I was talking about you don't have to be funny or clever. Flow is a classic book by, I think, I forget how to pronounce his name, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. This is a classic book. It's all about how to get into flow and what flow means, and it's kind of the principle I'm describing. So that's pretty much me. In summary, 5 principles that will make you a better product manager. Listen actively, remember to support your team, I've got your back. Embrace or set the scene, provide context, embrace yes and at the right time, and remember that you don't have to be funny or clever. And bang on time, that's me. If any of you want to give product management, give improv a go, there are a couple of great organisations in London. One's called Hoopla. They run classes and they also run shows. They've got a theatre down near London Bridge above a pub. And there's also the Free Association, who have a theatre above a pub in Islington. So give both of those a try. I recommend them. And if you want to connect to me on LinkedIn, there's my mandatory obligatory QR code. So thank you very much.